OK， 我而家
Do you have WhatsApp?
Yeah.
You do have WhatsApp. I sent you. You didn't even reply to me.
What? Did you send me something?
Yeah.
What?
I sent you a cool thing that I did for training.
No,
Yes.
you did not.
Just on the weekend.
Oh, it must have been something I didn't know. Obviously, you don't have your contact details in there.
You blocked me.
I must have deleted you. When did you send it to me? Oh, Saturday? Saturday?
Yeah, that's it.
Did you come? No, it comes up with like. Would you accept that?
Send it to my contacts. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I don't know.
You probably do not. My number. I have your number.
I would have originally had your numbers, probably all my old phone.
How about this? Oh, everyone. Whoops, I should mute that.
Making you know all of it.
Yên đó. Tại tốc Okay. Hi, can you hear me? You just 你停咗，唔係淨係 mute 即係聲。係啊，而家冇聲，唔係你有聲，你停有冇聲？係嗰個。係啦，係啊。Excellent. 試下試下，有冇聲？冇。試下試下，有冇聲？有。有冇辦法冇嘅聲？iPad 有冇辦法冇？
而家我而家整咗個，
咁就可能冇聲。Hello, testing. Okay, sounds like it's okay. 我哋把聲得唔得啊？你聽唔聽到？即係會唔會好大回音喺嗰度入邊？
我想問你睇唔睇到我？因為我睇唔到我自己。
我睇到啦，你
而家
齊晒，係。不過抬高啲可能好啲。嘢嚟佔高佢啊！可唔可以出邊？我有學，係仲有合嘅。Welcome and thank you for joining the Queensland Investment and Migration Virtual Fair. Welcome and thank you for joining the Queensland Investment and Migration Virtual Fair. Welcome and thank you for joining the Queensland Investment and Migration Virtual Fair. Welcome and thank you for joining the Queensland Investment and Migration Virtual Fair. This virtual event is organized by Trade and Investment Queensland, TIQ, Business and Skilled Migration Queensland, and Ascend Step International Limited. I'm your host of today. My name is Jeff Ken of Ascend Step Virtual. I'm a real person, not an avatar, as you met at the registration page. You will get to meet other real persons in this auditorium. This is the agenda for today.
你有冇 app 埋我呢個電話？group 裏邊有 app 埋我呢個電話？
邊個 app 埋你呢個電話？係，哦 OK。
app 埋我電話。
Change.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, Jeff. Can you see me? Hi, Jack. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Okay. Can't hear you.
Yes.
Hello, Jack.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good, good. Okay. I'm going to sit here now. I'm going to change to another room. Go back to the original room. Okay. I'm going to just do something here first. Could you actually tell me again what I should do next? Should I log in as an exhibitor?
Yes. But
And
you got to have another computer log in better.
sorry?
So you use another computer to log in as exhibitor.
Oh, okay. All right. Use another computer. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll do that now. Okay.
Yung Zoom is okay.
So
Hey,
I should use
Wilson.
share screen here, right? I should use share screen here, right?
Well, actually, I do this. Okay, you have to share the screen later.
Okay. All right. Okay. And I don't think I've sent you my slides, right? Do I need to send the slides to you now?
No, later.
Okay. All right. Okay.
At your turn, then you share the slides.
Okay. Yep. Yep. So I will. I'm a bit confused now. I can't remember. So I'll use this computer to share the slides, right? I'm going to use this. I'm going to use Zoom to do my presentation, right?
Yes, you use Zoom
Okay.
to share the slides.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Okay. I'm going to put the slides on now. Okay. Yep. No problem. And why do I need to log in as an exhibitor? Can't I just use this one?
I control.
Sorry. Why do I have to log in as an exhibitor?
Okay, only when you have to go to the exhibition hall and go to your booth, and when people
Okay.
talk to you, then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to log
understand.
in.
Okay, I understand. But for the purpose of presentation, I can just use this one, right?
Yes, for presentation,
understand.
you use Zoom and will be fine.
Okay. Yep. Understand. Okay. Stop this first, and okay.
Hi, Jeff. I think you've unmuted me.
Yeah.
Hello, my name's Mia. I'm just standing in for Josh. He's just with a client, but he will be back in time for his presentation.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Okay.
Is there anything you need from me?
Okay, now Jack has unmuted everyone. So apart from Vicky, you may have to be muted for the while.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so thank you, everyone. Now, this next 15 minutes, can you hear properly? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. This next 10 minutes, we can try each one's voice and also the image. And also you can, if you would like to share screen, please try so as everyone are sure that you can share screen and also your voice and video are okay. All right. So we start with myself first. So can you hear me okay? Is it good? The quality is okay?
Yes.
It's a
Yes,
little bit
it's okay.
echoey from this end.
Okay.
Do you can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Jeff, it sounds like a little bit echoey. Nothing too bad, but just to let you know, there's a bit of an echo.
Yes, because we are in a room. Is this better with a mic?
Do you have a mic?
Yes, I have a mic in here.
Oh, okay. Yep. Look, it's fine. It's okay. It's just a little bit echoey.
I try to do this with a mic down. Yeah, yes, but quite usually in a webinar, the echo is quite strong. But we are in an enclosed room, so the echo is even strong.
Okay.
Would it be better if we open the door? No. Okay.
Probably not.
Okay, and then I'm now using share screen. So you can see the share screen properly of the agenda?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, good, good. So I can run through the agenda later on with this share screen. And then I'll go back to my normal screen. So I think mine is okay, right, Jack? Okay, good, good, good. So the next speaker would be Julia. I will introduce Julia, and then Julia will speak. And then after Julia, maybe you can just briefly introduce Mani, and then the next one will be Mani after you. And similarly, Mani will probably just introduce Cynthia. So Cynthia will go on for them, and then the next one. Yes? Okay. Okay, thanks. Now I'm moving to another speaker, Julia, our VIP.
Yeah, so can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. I'll just share my screen just for the exercise.
Looks good.
So you've got that. Okay, great. And then I'm going to go to the next one.
With the 20-second delay.
Julia, you can see your notes. Do you have two screens? Have you got two screens connected?
I've got one, but on the big screen, it only shows the slide. So how do I?
If you go to the top where it says display settings, there's a drop down little arrow. You can actually change it from there and it will remove all your notes.
Let's see now. In the PowerPoint or in the, because in PowerPoint, I'm on slideshow.
Have you got two screens open though, Julia, or just one screen?
Hang on one sec.
Because often that's the reason. If you take out the second screen, that should be okay if you've got two.
Let me just, hang on one sec. It doesn't seem to want to open it. It always opens with the notes view. I don't quite know why. Hang on, sorry. Okay, I think that's it. Can you see that? Oh, hang on a sec. Let's see now. Is that... Great. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I'll mute myself. Marnie, over to you.
Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, lovely.
You can see yourself. I
Yes.
can't see much.
And then Cynthia? Cynthia will be talking from here. Oh, you're gone. That's okay. Did someone else take control? Yes, okay. We're all good.
Okay, well, I might have a go, guys. Are you able to hear me loud and clear?
Yes, it's all clear.
Okay, great, wonderful. I'll just quickly share my screen to a video that Josh Meggs has prepared. So just bear with me 2 seconds. Okay, someone else. Guys, am I right to just share my screen just to test the video?
Mhm.
Very quick, thank you. Great.
videos in the virtual booth, and you're welcome to look at those or reach out to me if you have any.
How does that sound, everyone?
Sounds a little bit echoey.
Beg your pardon, sorry, I missed that, Marnie.
Sounds a little bit echoey.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it could probably be the boardroom and also the fact that it's a video. But I will keep that in mind with Josh when he comes in. I'll let him know. See if we can do something about that. I'll just mute myself now. Thank you, guys.
Hi, hi everyone. I'm just going to test my voice. Is that okay? Does that sound okay to you? To everyone?
Sounds good.
Okay, then great. I'm going to try share my screen, but I don't know whether I can do this because I changed to use the iPad. Go. Walang muna ito. Google share screen already done some.
So Who else? Is Wilson okay?
Do you need to see my share screen?
Wilson, you can try.
Yep. Can you see my share screen?
Wilson 講嘅。
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Good.
Can you see my share screen?
But you have to project it. You use the presentation.
Yeah, I think I've done it already. Okay, I'll have a look.
Oh, but it's showing the slide on the side. Maybe you can squeeze smaller the slides on the side.
Not sure how to do it.
係啦。
Here, this one.
That on. Okay. Okay then.
Okay, I can ask you a question. Do I actually log off from Zoom when I start doing the booth as an exhibitor, or can I just leave it on?
Leave it on.
Leave it on. Okay. I'm gonna try to do it now.
Hello, welcome and thank you for joining the Queensland Investment and Migration Virtual Fair. This virtual event is organized by Trade and Investment Queensland, TIQ, Business and Skill Migration Queensland, BSMQ, and Ascend Step International Limited. I'm your host of today. My name is Jeff Chen of Ascend Step Virtual. I'm a real person, actually, not an avatar, as you met at the registration page. You will get to meet other real persons in this auditorium. And maybe I can show you the agenda for today. So after my introduction, we will start with our Trade and Investment Queensland Commissioner for Hong Kong and Macau, Ms. Julia Harris. And then we will talk about Queensland and Queensland's advantages. Then after that, it will be overview of COVID-19 Queensland situation and BSMQ's initiatives and settlement service to business migrants. This will be presented by Speaker Marnie Richardson, Senior Project Officer, BSMQ. And then the next one will be the overview of Queensland's nomination program for business visas. And this will be by Cynthia Chen, Senior Project Officer, BSMQ. Then, our Wilson Chen, Australia Asia Migration Consultants, will talk about business and investment, and especially subclass 188 and 132 visas. After that, the tax and accounting considerations for investment or migration into Queensland will be discussed by Vicky Fan and Josh. Vicky Fan is the managing partner of Fan Chen and Company Limited. And please note that we will have a Q&A session after all the presentations. That will be 15 minutes. And you can ask in WhatsApp. So we have sent out a separate instruction regarding the WhatsApp number. So you can please ask any questions during the presentations, and then we will consolidate your questions and the respective speakers will answer it accordingly. And we have to give special thanks to some of the associations that supported us with attendees joining us today. And this includes FAAA, the Federation of Australian Alumni Associations, Hong Kong EIA, the Hong Kong Electronic Industry Association, and also Hong Kong AS, Hong Kong Apparel Society. So after this session, at about 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, we will then open up all the booths, and we will have representatives from individual exhibitor to directly get into contact with you. So if you have any questions, and if you want to talk with anyone in the particular booth, please remain here about 2 to 3 o'clock, and please hashtag or video chat any questions you would like. So without further ado, may I introduce Ms. Julia Harris, our Trade and Investment Commissioner for Hong Kong and Macau. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And hello, everyone. As Jeff said, I am the Trade and Investment Commissioner for Queensland, based here in Hong Kong. First of all, I'd like to sincerely thank Jeff and also Jack So of Ascent Step International for organizing this webinar. I'd also like to thank Vicky Chan, also here in Hong Kong, and Josh Meggs of Pilot Partners, and Wilson Chan of Australia Asia Migration in Brisbane. It's a pleasure to be here to speak to you all. I'm just going to share my screen now. Oh, sorry. hopefully that's clear. So today, I and my colleagues, Marnie Richardson and Cynthia Chen, who are Senior Project Officers from Business and Skilled Migration Queensland, are going to provide you with insights on the advantages of Queensland as an investment and migration destination, an overview of the COVID-19 situation in Queensland, and a high-level overview of government support for business migrants during COVID-19, as well as updates on our business program and information on the main criteria of the BSMQ business visa program as it currently stands. Cynthia and Marnie will then be available for Q&A at the end of this presentation. At the moment, there's no doubt that everyone listening here today has had their life affected by COVID-19. And throughout the world, not only is there a global health crisis, but also an economic one. Australia and Queensland, of course, have also been affected by this. However, despite challenging times, the advantages of Queensland remain. We are blessed to have a responsible and stable government, which has dealt swiftly and effectively in response to COVID-19. And at this point in time, we've successfully managed to flatten the curve. We have a diverse range of key industry sectors for investment opportunities, which are shown on the screen, and include food and agribusiness, mining, natural resources and energy, tourism, international education, health and knowledge industries, and urban development and infrastructure. In a post-COVID environment, Queensland will be encouraging investment in areas such as manufacturing, innovative products and services not yet in Queensland, especially in the digital and IT space, and renewable energy. There'll also be a strong focus on encouraging regional investment and migration. We've had a stable economy for many years, and we are the most diversified state in Australia. We have 5 major cities of between 100 and 200,000 people. We also have efficient and connected infrastructure, including 6 airports. We have an affordable cost of living with lower house prices than many of the eastern states. And we are an international gateway to Asia Pacific, as well as being very pro-business. And lastly, but not least, we are known as the Sunshine State with an exceptional climate of over 300 days of sunshine per year. We have world-class educational institutions, including 10 highly ranked universities, such as the University of Queensland, for you and your children to consider. Many of these have international partnerships globally and offer extraordinary research opportunities also into vaccination for COVID-19. Queensland welcomes business migrants and will continue to do so in the future. I'm going to hand over now to my colleague, Business and Skilled Migration Queensland Senior Project Officer Marnie Richardson, to give you some updates on the COVID-19 situation in Queensland, as well as the Queensland government support in current times and in general. Let's all hope for a swift return to better times here in Hong Kong, in Queensland, and throughout the world. Over to you, Marnie. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your introduction. And I'd also like to thank Ascent Step International Limited for organising this webinar and for everyone attending and listening today. So I would like to start off with who is Business and Skilled Migration and what do we do? Well, Business and Skilled Migration, or BSMQ for short, is a business unit of Trade and Investment Queensland and is the Queensland government agency responsible for visa nomination. So we have a long-standing arrangement with the Commonwealth Government for Queensland to nominate to business visas. So that includes the 132 Business Talent Visa and the 188 Innovation and Investment Visas, which is what we'll be discussing today. We also nominate for skilled visas, including the 190 Permanent Visa and the 491 Skilled Work Regional Visa. So we won't discuss skilled visas in the webinar today, but if you have a question regarding skilled visas, you can come to the chat room following this webinar to ask any questions on these. Okay, so before Cynthia dives into business program updates and details, I'm going to give you an update on the COVID-19 situation in Queensland as of today. So due to a fast-acting and responsible government, which is what Julia has already touched on, and successful following of the rules by Australian residents, such as staying at home and social distancing, as Julia mentioned, we've successfully managed to flatten the curve. So overall in Australia, as of today, June 10th, 2020, there's been 7,265 cases of COVID-19, 2 cases in the last 24 hours, and sadly 102 deaths. In Queensland, we've had 1,062 confirmed cases, but there's been 0 cases in the last 24 hours. We only currently have 3 active cases in Queensland, as most patients have recovered from the virus. So because of this, we're now in stage 2 of restrictions being eased, and this was in place from June the 1st, 2020, which means at this stage, Queensland is open for Queenslanders, and there's unlimited travel in the state, including overnight stays, and 20 people are now allowed in establishments such as cafes and restaurants, cinemas, other public facilities, and also for home visits. So at the moment, state borders and international borders are still closed, apart from citizens and permanent residents and their families being able to enter internationally. And at this stage, we don't know when they will reopen, but the state border closure will be reviewed at the end of June. So you can see from this slide how Australia is comparing to the rest of the world in numbers of COVID-19 cases, and how we are successfully managing to flatten the curve. So you can see this clearly against countries like the US and a lot of countries in Europe. As Julia mentioned, obviously there has been industries that have been hard hit, and they include tourism, hospitality, and international education. But there's been many support packages which have been made available by state and federal governments to assist householders and businesses, including businesses owned by business migrants, if they meet the criteria. So just as an example of what the Queensland State Government has provided, one package includes a $4 billion package to support householders and businesses, and inclusive of this is $500 million to help workers who have lost their jobs to retrain and find jobs in critical industries such as healthcare, agriculture, food production, transport, cleaning, and mining. In Queensland, small to medium enterprises have also received a 3-month payroll tax holiday and a further 6-month deferral. So there are a lot of various other schemes and loans available for business owners by the federal and state government, which I won't go into here. But if you want to find some more information, you can do so at his website, australia.gov.au. Okay, so I also just want to touch on some initiatives that we undertake generally to support business migrants when they're in Queensland in better times. So we hold settlement information seminars for business migrants, really to provide details on what they need to do to successfully progress from provisional to permanent visas. We invite professionals such as lawyers and accountants to talk about how to successfully set up a business in Queensland, and also discuss tax and other considerations. We invite successful business migrants to talk about their migration journey, and a whole host of other community support groups such as police liaison representatives. So this was pictured here is a settlement information seminar we held last year in September, and this was for Mandarin speakers. There are 100 business migrants that attended the event, so it was a very well attended event, and we're looking at having another settlement information seminar when we can, probably early 2021, for speakers other than Mandarin. Okay, so we also hold investment and export roadshows for business migrants looking to invest in their second and third investment. So this was a roadshow that we undertook in the Wide Bay Burnett regional area again in September last year. So we worked with TIQ regional office and also the regional councils and mayors, and we organised 40 delegates, including business migrants, investors, migration agents, investment directors to tour the Wide Bay Burnett region. And the purpose of the roadshow is really just to showcase the region's industry capabilities and a diversity of business opportunities. So we took the delegates on a lot of different site visits to different horticulture sectors. So, things like strawberry farms, sweet potato farms, macadamia nut farms, engineering firms, and a whole host of other companies to really look at the investment opportunities of the region. We did have some immediate outcomes. We have a 1 through 2 business talent visa holder from Vietnam looking at buying a farm in Harvey Bay, and another migrant looking at property development and farm technology in Bundaberg. Okay, so just before we move on to business program updates, I just want to let you know that we also offer 45-minute meetings for business migrants. Basically, these are exploratory visit meetings as a new arrival, and also, prior to applying, so you can discuss your business idea with us prior to applying. If you'd like to book a meeting with us, you can do so via our website under business visa options. And obviously, we're taking these, undertaking these by phone or Skype currently. So on that note, I will now hand over to my colleague Cynthia Chen to give you an update on the business program and to go over the main business visas we nominate for. So over to you, Cynthia.
Good afternoon. Yeah. Here. Can everyone hear me? Hello.
Yes, yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Chen from Business Skill Migration Queensland. I'm just give you a quick run through of the Queensland business nomination program. You may be aware every July there will be big changes with the nomination program, either skill nomination or business nomination program. So we're still aiming to open this nomination program in July 2020, but at this stage, the nomination quota still has to be announced by the federal government. Could possibly be October 2020, and we're still planning to introduce our new criteria. But also yes, subject to the business innovation investment program review change implemented by the Department of Home Affairs later in the later stage. BSMQ also plans to introduce a new quota monthly system in the new financial year. So we predict there will be a lot of changes coming up. So we already have received a lot of inquiries about when these skill migration coins are going to be open our nomination program. All we can see, you have to monitor our website for the updates and looking for the new criteria and new changes, or if it's for skill nomination, looking for Queensland occupation under nomination changes. So just watch the space and stay tuned. If anything coming up, we'll announce on the website. And we also have a social media like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, to provide you with the latest updates. So the next slide, I'm going to talk about the Business Skill Migration Queensland nomination program for 132 visa. We all know this visa has two streams, and it's only permanent residency visa for business nomination program. So this visa is good if you have a very strong business background, significant business assets, and also you must be under 55 years old. On the screen, you can see the general rule for this visa conditions. For Queensland nomination, basically look at you have to invest in qualified business in Queensland. You can either set up a new business or purchase existing business. And you also have to show your commitment to live in Queensland in the future. At the time applying for Queensland nomination, you need to provide a business proposal. You can either complete the BSMQ's business proposal form, or you can provide your full business plan. In regard to investment, we expect you to transfer 1.5 million Australian dollars to Queensland after visa grant. And out of this money, we put 1 million into your business in Queensland, and the rest money for your family settlement. The other visa very popular with a lot of candidates is 188 visa, which is a temporary visa for 4 years. But it's also pathway to the permanent residency in future. This visa subclass has 5 visa streams, but with state government, we generate normally 4 visa streams. The first most popular one is the innovation stream. Again, you must be under 55 years old. You have to meet the points test, which is 65 minimum at the moment. Compared with other state government, Queensland haven't changed the points. We stick with 65, but of course, if you have high points, that means you have a stronger background. Again, you have to put money into Queensland for a business, either purchase a new one or purchase existing one or start a new business from scratch. The process is very similar. You have to provide a business plan. The funds transfer drop down to 800,000, but again, you have to put certain money, 200,000 minimum, into a business in Queensland. We have a lot of people looking at a small business, which we call like entry level, like retail, franchise, shops, cafe, restaurant. We prefer you invest this kind of business in regional Queensland, which also have a big demand for this type of business. In Brisbane, Gold Coast, there's a lot of competition. If we want to set up this kind of business in Brisbane, Gold Coast, we hope you can increase the investment level to like 300,000 or 500,000, which make your business at a certain scale to compete with other similar business. But for investment, you don't have to invest a lump sum at the beginning. You can make an investment at different stages. So at the time you apply for 888 visa in the future, we will look at accumulatively you have invested at least 200,000. For entry-level business, hopefully you can increase it much more. The other visa stream, which is very popular with a lot of Hong Kong people, is the investor stream. Again, it's a points test visa. You have to have 65 points minimum, under 55 years old. But the assets requirement will be increased to 2.25 million Australian dollars, which you have to look at it yourself. If you're married with a spouse, altogether you have 2.25 million assets to be available to transfer to Queensland in the future. Out of this money, you put 1.5 million into Queensland Cherry Corporation bond for 4 years. And this investment, designated investment, you must make before you are granted with a visa. Again, you have to show your willingness to live in Queensland for at least 2 years out of the 4 years before you apply for your permanent residency. Compared with the other state government, at this stage, we don't have additional investment requirements. But if you decide to, to purchase a property, or if you want for family living, or if you want to do a business for your own interest, you can do this. And that's, again, we show your commitment to Queensland. The third visa stream is called a significant investor stream, which is was very popular a couple of years ago because this visa stream has no age limit, no points tested, and very minimal requirement for residency in Australia. So all you have to do, you've got 5 million available from your own assets accumulation, or with a spouse, or even if you have some young people with gifts as a gift from the parents. As long as you can show your money, 5 million is legitimate. Your parents get the money in a legitimate way and pass on to you. You can provide some evidence. You can apply for this visa. The compliant investment stream for 5 million is set up by Australia, and it was very strict now. You have to put 500,000 into a venture capital fund and 1.5 million into a managed funds comprising a lot of classes, and another stream as a balanced investment. It's a very complicated compliant investment framework. If you're interested in this visa stream, suggest you talk to a migration agent to give you, and also managed fund company to give you a full picture of this visa requirement. So again, this visa stream is good for people who have very good wealth, but don't may not be able to live in Australia for long term, because you only have to live in like 40 days per year. If you can't meet this requirement, your spouse can meet the requirement, that would be good. So all these details will be available on the website. So if you're interested in this visa, just talk to your migration agent to make a full assessment of yourself and have a good understanding of the visa requirement. This is a snapshot of the Queensland nomination in the past, in the previous financial years. You can see most of people would invest in wholesale, construction, and accommodation. The first two sectors are construction, but this construction also including property development. I just want to point out, we don't allow the 188 visa holders to invest in property development, especially for 188 business in industry, because that's for small business operation. And property development is a long-term, large capital investment projects. And we look at project scale of 10 million at least. And you require to have relevant background in construction or property development business before, or you have a joint venture partner to help you to go through the process. And the property development, it's not just in residential development. You can also look at commercial development, like the logistics hub in regional Queensland, like Toowoomba. They're looking for investment in building a logistic hub or warehouse facilities near the Toowoomba private airport, which also have direct flights to Hong Kong for freights. Wholesale business is more for export or distribution sales business. Accommodation food service, that's including like a motel business, restaurant, cafe business. A lot of people want to start this kind of business, but I'll have to tell you, it's not easy. It's very hard because you have to get up very early in the morning and work long hours. So if you want to purchase a restaurant business, prepare to get a lot of ideas from people already in this industry to understand how it operates. The other sectors is very evenly spread out. So for Queensland, we encourage you to look at different investment opportunities because Queensland offers such very diversified opportunities, just as my colleague Julia and Mani mentioned before. And the TIQ and the BSMQ can help you to identify new opportunities, but you are also encouraged to do your own market research to find out the opportunities which you're capable to make investment, and it's fall into your business interest. So here's our contact details. You're welcome to send us an email or find us on the Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, and we are always check our inbox every day. And our latest information is all on the website. We have fact sheets and also a Chinese fact sheets available for people who prefer to read in Chinese. So again, thank you for your attention. I now hand over to Wilson Chen to give you a more thorough, in-depth talk about the business visas.
Can you all hear me and see me? Okay. Yeah, thank you for having me today. Just before I start, I need to let you know that the information that I give today is not very accurate because it's only information that is subject to change all the time. So please do not rely on the information that I give you today to make any decision. All right, so this is a standard disclaimer. A bit about myself. I've been a migration agent for 25 years, and I'm also a chartered accountant and a CPA. So I'm quite experienced in doing business and investor visa migration into Australia. And I happen to be a translator as well, so I'm pretty much a one-stop shop here. All right, let's move on. There are two main types of business visas for people who want to come to Australia. The first one is a one-step permanent resident visa, which is 132. There are two subclasses in 132, the A and B, all right? We're going to talk about 132A today because there are not too many people who will qualify for 132B. But if you're interested, by all means, contact me privately. We're also talking about the temporary visa as a pathway to the permanent visa, which is the 188 visa. There are 5 streams, and I'll go through them one by one later. So let's go back to 132. It's called the business talent visa. 132A refers to the significant business history stream. So basically, you need to be in business for at least 2 years. The net asset of the business that you're entitled to should be at least $400,000. In simple terms, if you only hold 50% of the shares in the company, the net asset of the company has to be $800,000 because you're only entitled to half of it. So your share of the net asset in the business has to be at least $400,000 for 2 years, in the last 4 years. The second requirement is you must have at least 1.5 million in total assets to be transferred to Australia. This amount is not required to be transferred to Australia until the visa has been granted. The business must have a total turnover of at least $3 million in the last 2 financial years for the last 4 years. So you can pick the best 2 years in the last 4 years. So these are the requirements. It's actually quite straightforward, okay? So $3 million turnover, 1.5 million of net assets to be transferred to Australia, and 400,000 in net asset in the business, all right? So it sounds simple, but it's actually not that straightforward. So you need to meet a lot of requirements. Say, for example, you need to prove that you are managing the business at a senior level on a day-to-day basis. So if you're a pure investor in a business and you're not managing the business, you're not qualified. The advantage of this visa is it is a one-step permanent visa. If you're granted a visa, you'll be monitored for 3 years. If you follow, basically, if you follow what you promised the government that you will do in Australia, then your visa will be okay. This visa is subject to cancellation if you do not fulfill your commitment. Say, for example, if you do not carry out a business at a senior level, you don't bring money into Australia, or you just invest in a passive business in Australia. So if you don't comply with the initial undertakings that you give to the Department of Immigration, then your visa may be subject to cancellation. So this is the best visa that one can get for business visas. So if you're not qualified for a 132 visa, or if you're qualified but you don't want to invest $1 million in a business in Australia, then there's another option. So this is a two-way process, two-step process. You get a temporary visa first, and then with a view to get a permanent visa later. So there are 5 streams, as we just mentioned, all right? But they share a lot of common criteria. Firstly, you have to be nominated by a state. There are 8 states and territories in Australia, so you need to get their nomination. You have to be less than 55 years old. You need to have a successful business or investment history, etc. 65 points. This is the minimum points that you are required to get. Some states may require more points, right? But at the moment, Queensland only requires 65 points. And because this visa is to be nominated by a state may have peculiar requirements on the amount of investment and the type of investment and the industry in the state in order to get the sponsorship. So you need to first determine which state you want to go to, and then we can advise you the particular requirement of that particular state. So these are the 5 types of or 5 streams of 188 visas, and we'll go through them one by one. The first one, which is by far the most common, is the 188 visa. So you need to prove that you have acquired $800,000, which can be legally transferred to Australia within 2 years after the grant of the visa. So basically, in simple terms, you must have at least $800,000 in net assets. The annual turnover of your business has to be $500,000 in at least 2 of the last 4 years. You must have owned the business, which we call the main business. You must have owned at least 30% of the business. All right. This is quite complicated, but I'll just explain it in simple terms. You have to own at least 30% of a business. All right, and the business has to have a turnover of $500,000. In fact, you can actually add 2 main businesses in the application, and that's why all these percentages are different. Okay, but to keep it simple, 30% of ownership and $500,000 of turnover. If your turnover is less than 500,000, but you have more than 1 business, you can contact us and we will advise you how you can actually meet the requirement. There's actually a very important requirement that a lot of people overlook. You must have managed the business at a senior level on a day-to-day basis. This is very important, okay? If you are carrying on a business in a professional discipline or trade or technical discipline, then you must have at least spent half of your time as a manager rather than doing the professional or technical job yourself. One example, if you are a doctor, you are operating a clinic. If you're the only doctor in the clinic, then you probably won't satisfy this because you are actually providing your services as a professional, not as a manager. I believe you'll be very interested in this one. If you got the 188A, how can you get your permanent visa? All right. So after you've been granted a visa, you must come to Australia, own a main business for at least 2 years. Okay, this is very important. You must have owned the business in Australia for 2 years, and you must have lived in Australia for 2 years. All right. Even though the law says that it's 1 year, but I'll explain to you why. It's actually a lot more prudent if you have lived here for 2 years. The main business that you use to apply for the permanent visa, you must have how the business. If you acquire business from someone who has used the business to apply for a business visa before, then you must have jointly owned the shares of the company for at least 1 year. Basically, the purpose of this requirement is not for recycling of business for business visas. You can't just acquire business from someone who just passed and get a permanent visa and then just recycle. You can't do that. You have to jointly own the shares together with the person. But if you acquire completely new business or a business from someone who's got nothing to do with this business visa, then it should be okay. The turnover requirement for 12 months, the turnover has to be $300,000. All right. Remember that you need to have owned the main business for 2 years, but the turnover, the department will only look at the turnover for 1 year. So for 1 year, the turnover has to be over $300,000. And similar to the original requirement on shareholder, you must have held at least 51% of the shares if the turnover is less than 400,000. And if the turnover is more than 400,000, you only need to hold 30% of the shares. It's actually prudent to own the percentage in the company more than 30%, to at least 51%, because in case the turnover is between $300,000 and $400,000, you still meet the requirement. Otherwise, if the turnover is $350,000 and you only hold 40% of the shares, you won't qualify. So it's safer to hold at least 51% of the shares. So if you want to apply for permanent residence, you have to also meet the following two of the following three requirements. The net interest in your main business has to be $200,000. You have to employ 2 local employees, and your personal assets has to be $600,000. Remember that you're required to bring $800,000 into Australia. So the law actually allows you to have used $200,000. So the requirement at the time when you apply for permanent residence is actually lower. Okay, this visa 188A is points tested. Let's go to the points, okay? Okay, so it will look at your age. So if you're between 25 to 32, you'll get the highest points, and if you're above 55, you get no points. The English, right? So if you have English standards, then it will give you 5 or 10 points. These are not required. If you do have English points, they will help you. Qualifications, likewise, it's not required, but if you have qualifications, then you may get 5 to 10 points. Business skills. If you have been in business for 4 years, you'll get 10 points. If you've been in business for 7 years, you'll get 15 points. Your personal assets, say for example, if you have 2.25 million, then you get the maximum number of points. If you have just the required amount of $800,000, you only have 5 points. If you remember that the pass score is 65, you can see that your net wealth between 2.25 and 800,000 makes a big difference because there's a difference of 30 points here. This is very substantial in view of the total pass mark of 65. So if you're carrying on a business, apply for 188A, your turnover will be considered as well in the points test. If your business has a very high turnover, say for example 2 mil, you have 35 points already. So if you have a very high turnover plus very high net worth of over 2.25 million, you will have enough points to migrate already. You don't even have to look at the points. There are other areas that you can get points. So if you have a patent or have a trademark, or if you are mainly involved in export business, you get extra points. But this export business would require you to have at least 90% of your business as export. And if you are carrying on a very special business, you may get a special endorsement from the state government. So if you don't have enough points, you may ask the state to give you 10 extra points if they're prepared to do so. So that is a summary of 188A leading to the 888A permanent visa. If you haven't conducted any business before, you are entitled to apply for a 188B visa if you have $1.5 million to invest in Australia. A lot of people have misunderstanding about this visa. They incorrectly think that if they have $1.5 million to be put in a government bond, then they'll be qualified. But that is not as easy. Okay. Basically, I'll explain to you later that this $1.5 million has to be accumulated from your investment earnings or from your business profits. It cannot be accumulated from, say, your salary or wages, or it cannot be from a gift. So it has to be accumulated from investment earnings or business profits. The net worth of your business assets personal and business assets has to be 2.25, which means that you need to bring in $750,000 in addition to the 1.5 million, which is used for government bond. In order to satisfy this requirement, you need to have either management skills in relation to an eligible investment or a qualified business. Basically, you need to be an active investor, or you need to be carrying on a business. The difference between the requirements in business between the 188A and B is that in 188A, you need to be carrying on a main business, all right? But for 188B, you only need to be carrying on a qualifying business. Qualifying business is a business that you hold at least 10% or more of the shares, all right? But for a main business, you have to hold at least 30% of the shares. So that's a difference. So if you have some passive investment in a business that you hold at 10% or 15% of the shares, you are still qualified to apply for 188B, but not 188A. So these are the additional requirements. In the last 3 years, you must be managing a qualifying business or an eligible investment. So you need to invest $1.5 million into a government bond, and you need to have a genuine and realistic commitment to continue your business and investment after the original investment has matured. So I've mentioned about this already. You need to have direct involvement in eligible investment or in a business, all right? And for a business, you must have owned at least 10% of the shares of the business. The 188B visa is also subject to a points test. So the points test is similar to what I just showed you for 188A. The only difference is if you're applying for 188B visa, it will actually look at your investment experience. If you have at least 4 years investment experience, you get 10 points. If you have more than 7 years, you'll get 15 points. 188C, I believe that a lot of you might have heard about 188C. This visa is quite straightforward. $5 million. You're required to invest the money in a particular way. At least 500,000 has to be in venture capital funds, all right, and 1.5 in emerging business, and then the rest in managed funds. This amount of money of 5 million does not need to be earned from your investment or from your business. It can be a gift from your parents. It can be accumulated from your salaries, or it can be accumulated from your capital gains in property dealings, etc. So as far as the sources of fund is concerned, it has to be legal, but it's a lot more flexible compared with 188B. If you want to apply for permanent residence with the 188C visa, you need to have lived in Australia for 160 days in 4 years. All right, so this is quite easy to achieve. So on average, you need to spend about 40 days in a year in Australia, but you don't have to come here every year. So the cumulative days in Australia will be considered, not the presence on a yearly basis. So basically, the assets owned by your partner or your spouse together with you will be considered. So the funds has to be unencumbered. You can't borrow the funds to meet the 5 million requirement, all right? So you have to use clean funds with no mortgage on it, no encumbrances. So I'm not going to talk about this one, but the requirement is $15 million. So not a lot of people will be interested in this one, but if you do, just give me a call. I'm more than happy to explain this to you. So this last one, I'm not going to spend too much time on it as well, because this visa sounds very easy and straightforward, but it's actually not the case. It requires you basically to have a business plan in Australia and secure investments from certain entities in Australia. So these entities are mainly government entities, universities, or research institutions. So this visa does not consider the amount of money that you invest into your proposed business. Rather, it looks at the funding that you can secure from these entities. So basically, the rationale is if you can get someone else to invest in your business, the government believes that you should have the ability to carry on the business because these parties, these third parties are confident in investing in your business, right? So this is quite difficult. Not many people can satisfy this requirement, but if you believe you're interested, give us a call. The most difficult thing about this visa is when you try to apply to become a permanent resident, the visa criteria is actually quite subjective. You need to convince the department, or you need to satisfy the department that your business performance and your continuous funding and number of employees are actually satisfactory, but there's no objective criteria set. So this is actually a big question mark for this visa. So that concludes the presentation for me for today. I'm now going to pass the time to Vicky.
Hi, everyone. It's really my pleasure to be here today. It's my first time to be on a virtual fair, and I think this will become a trend in future. Again, many thanks for the invitation from the organizers of this fair, Business and Skilled Migration Queensland, Trade and Investment Queensland in Hong Kong, and Ascent Step International Limited. So just to introduce a little bit about myself, I grew up in Hong Kong and then I lived in Australia for 8 years for my study there. After graduation, I was back to Hong Kong and now I'm currently running a CPA firm. So this session will just be a short introduction about from my side. And then Josh of our network firm in Brisbane, Pilot Partners, will share his knowledge on various considerations for investment into Queensland. Pre-migration planning is very important. You might invest as an individual or corporations, and the tax considerations will be very different for each. So we need to better plan for the future taxes, which might arise at the time or after the migration. Hong Kong has a much simpler tax system than Australia. In a nutshell, Hong Kong practices the territorial principle of taxation, whereas Australia adopts the worldwide income principle. Hong Kong has a much more narrow tax base. We have fewer types of taxes and lower tax rates in general. Hong Kong currently does not have a comprehensive tax treaty for double taxation with Australia. And this essentially means that if you are an Australian tax resident whose income has a Hong Kong source, for example, employment income from Hong Kong entities, interest in Hong Kong entities, and rental proceeds from Hong Kong properties might be taxed twice. This is because, as I mentioned earlier, you will have to pay tax in Hong Kong based on the Hong Kong territorial source principle of taxation, and then be taxed in Australia based on their worldwide income principle. However, you may be entitled to claim a tax offset if the tax on Hong Kong income has actually been paid into the Hong Kong government, and that the income has been declared in your assessable income for Australian income tax purposes to the Australian Tax Authority. And for rental income, for instance, there might also be certain special exemption on this passive income derived in Hong Kong. So as part of the pre-migration planning for individuals, a formal valuation on all investment assets should be carried out to establish the value against which future taxes will be levied. For instance, assets such as Hong Kong shares can be valued using the last market price at the migration time, rather than the historical cost if it is more favorable. So this may subsequently have a huge impact on tax payable on the income when the proceeds are realized. Company structures also need to be well planned. Consideration should be made for any changes necessary for existing structures, whether and how new structures should be made, tax impact on corporates and dividends, which will ultimately be distributed to the beneficial owners, maintenance costs, and also inheritance issues. So there are a lot to consider, and there are pros and cons for different structures. So lastly, I'm going to talk just a little bit about trust structure, which is very common in Australia. It could be tax efficient and largely help with the inheritance issue too. In case of a foreign trust, we have to bear in mind that the income from the foreign trust generates, which are later distributed to an Australian tax resident beneficiary, are actually taxable in Australia. Therefore, before your migration, the trustee of the foreign trust may consider the possible distribution of any unpaid retained earnings to the beneficiary. And in addition, we can also consider about the location of the trustee and whether the trustee should remain in Hong Kong and have control and central management of the trust in Hong Kong or not. The foreign trust may turn into a resident trust if the trustee also migrates to Australia, with this tax consequence that the worldwide income of the trust may become taxable. So you can see there are a lot of planning before the migration into Queensland. And that's all from my side. So I'll now pass to Josh of Pilot Partners in Brisbane for his sharing about running a business in Australia.
Thank you, Vicky. Vicky's absolutely right in terms of planning before moving to Australia. It's very important that you do seek advice before you look to make any move. Something often we come across is clients who have moved into Australia and then they come to us and they let us know, and they do have these foreign structures, trusts or companies that they've had from overseas. And unfortunately, there can be very severe taxation consequences with bringing those structures into Australia. Unfortunately, structures do not cross borders very easily. And so it's often best to consider whether there's some other way to move those assets into Australia. I've posted a number of videos in the exhibition hall, so feel free to have a look through those. They are covering a variety of topics from running a business in Australia to moving to Australia. And I'll cover some of those points at a very high level for you now. But of course, if you have any questions, my contact details are in the exhibition hall, and you're welcome to reach out to me either by email or telephone call, and I'll answer any questions that you have. When someone moves into Australia, our tax system is a little bit different to the taxation system in Hong Kong. In Australia, if you are a tax resident of Australia, then you are taxable in Australia on your worldwide income. So that means that if you have income from a foreign company, or even if it's from employment overseas, or you're paid a contractor fee, that income, if you're a tax resident of Australia, must be declared in your Australian income tax return. When you move to Australia, the other thing that happens is that if you become a resident of Australia, then your assets, your worldwide assets, are also brought into the Australian taxation net. And so what that means is, if on the day that you arrive, the market value of, say, some property that you might have in Hong Kong is $1 million, you take that market value and that becomes your cost base for that property in Australia. And we have a capital gains tax in Australia. And so if that property increases in value in the future and you sell that property, then that increase in value from the time that you became a resident until the time that the property is sold, that also forms part of your taxable income here in Australia. I'd like to spend a little bit of time now also talking about running a business in Australia. Australia is a great place to be able to start and run a business, and it's reasonably easy. I'll talk a little bit about starting a business while you might be overseas. A lot of our clients run businesses in Australia, have expanded their businesses from offshore, but they don't necessarily live in Australia. And it's quite possible to run a business in Australia while you reside overseas. In Australia, there's two very common business structures if you reside overseas. The first one that people often use is an Australian local company. So a company that is an Australian company incorporated here in Australia. And you can set that up and start running a business through that. And you might have a foreign shareholder. There's no requirement in Australia for your shareholder to be an Australian resident or Australian citizen. It can be a foreign person or foreign company. However, if you set up a company in Australia, it is a requirement. You must have an Australian resident director. Now, that doesn't mean that the director needs to be an Australian citizen or an Australian permanent resident. A lot of these concepts for tax purposes or corporations law purposes mean resident under the ordinary use of the word reside. Where is it that someone lives? So you could be here for a shorter period of time, but if you live here in Australia, then you would be eligible to be a resident director of that company. The other way that people set up businesses in Australia, if they're conducting that business from overseas, is called a permanent establishment or branch. What this means is if you have a Hong Kong incorporated company or another company overseas, you could take that company and actually apply to have that same company, that same entity registered here in Australia with our authorities, the Australian Taxation Office and the Australian Securities and Investments Commission. That approach is a little more difficult because what we would need to do is take your governing documents, your constitution or articles of association, the incorporating documents for that business, that company. And if they're not in English, we would need to have them translated into English by an approved translator. And then we would submit them to our authorities and they would register that entity here in Australia. Whether you have a local company or a foreign company registered here in Australia, the tax rate in Australia is the same. So for businesses from 1 July 2020, which is the start of our next financial year, there are two corporate tax rates in Australia. One is 26% for smaller businesses and the other one is 30%. So that is 30% of your taxable profit here, including capital gains in Australia. That's the corporate rate. There are different rates for individuals and they vary from 0% to 47% is our top marginal tax rate. When you have a business here in Australia, there are certain registrations that will also be required. One is an Australian business number, and that helps you register for goods and services tax in Australia. Goods and services tax is very similar to VAT in Europe, if you're familiar with that. It is quite different to sales tax in America. In Australia, our tax system is a federal system. So that means there are not too many state-based taxes. So starting a business in Queensland is no different or more expensive than starting a business in New South Wales or Victoria. It's much the same because it is a federal-based taxation system. In Australia, goods and services tax is levied on most of your sales to Australian customers, unless the sale is specifically exempt. You would charge GST on that sale. That GST is charged at a rate of 10%. Also, on your purchases, most of your purchases from suppliers, you're able to claim GST back. So at the end of the month of the quarter, whenever it is that is your reporting period, you need to pay the net amount. So GST on sales collected, less your GST on your purchases. Whatever the net amount is, you would need to pay that to the Australian Taxation Office. If you purchased more things than you sold, then you would actually get a refund back from the Australian Taxation Office, a cash refund, and they would do that. It's also quite common for businesses in Australia to have employees, and there are a few requirements around doing that. We have a mandatory pension fund in Australia called superannuation. that's 9.5% of an employee's wages. And so that's payable each quarter to employees to a pension fund of their choice. In Australia, you would also need to withhold tax from your employees when you pay them a wage. And that happens every time you pay them. And at the end of the quarter or the end of the month, you send that withholding to the Australian Taxation Office. And that all happens on the same form as your goods and services tax reporting. So it's quite an efficient process where you report maybe monthly, but probably 4 times a year at the end of every quarter. And then finally, once the year is finished, you do an annual income tax return that also reconciles your profit and your expenditure for the year. That's probably a very good high-level summary of some of the taxation implications for individuals and businesses running in Australia. Also on the exhibition hall, if you are looking at maybe buying an investment property on the Gold Coast or something like that as a rental property, I have some videos there covering certain things that you need to be aware of and different types of deductions and the like that you can get if you have a rental property in Australia. It also covers the Foreign Investment Review Board, which is an important government authority that regulates investment from foreign people into Australia, be it companies or the acquisition of property. So there's some rules there around that. So I hope that has been beneficial for you, and certainly happy to take any questions that you might have.
Hello, hi. Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the presentation from all our speakers. Now it is the Q&A session. So now we have roughly about 15 to 20 minutes for the any questions that you would like to raise. Earlier on, we have received a few questions already. So maybe during this session, I will ask particular speakers accordingly. And then just to remind before the Q&A question, that after the Q&A session at 2 o'clock Hong Kong time or 4 o'clock Brisbane time, we can start the live exhibition. So the attendees can go to each individual booth and then be able to talk with the representative in the particular booth. Say, if you go to Fan Chen's booth, then you can talk with the representative in there, and you can further ask any questions regarding Hong Kong tax or any other questions you may have regarding, you know, how to change your investments from Hong Kong into Australia, etc. So that will be 2 to 3 o'clock later on today. Okay, so maybe let's start with the Q&A session. So the first question is a real life case. And this question I will ask Mani.
Sure.
This real life case is a couple. The husband is electrical engineer background with the wife a nurse. So they are willing to sell home in Hong Kong and then start a business related to automotive repair overseas. Is there any chance they can settle in Queensland? Mani, please, if you have anything to add, thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. And I assume that the couple has a working background as employees and not as business owners. So in that situation, you would need to look at a skilled visa. And the first thing that you would look at in terms of a skilled visa is that either one of you is under 45, because that is the age limit. So if you're under 45, then the next thing you'd need to look at is, do you meet 65 points for the skilled visa? And basically you've got to look at things like age, work experience, English, qualifications to meet the 65 points. Keeping in mind that Queensland will also give you some points for state nomination. So 5 points for the 190 and 15 points for the 491. So if you've got 65 points, then the next thing you look at is your skills assessment. So if you're a nurse, you've got to get a skills assessment from ANMAC. And if you're an electrical engineer, I believe it's Engineers Australia. So you've got to have a skills assessment. But first you've got to work out who's going to be the primary applicant. You also need an English test, and you need to get a minimum of 6 in IELTS. So there's other English tests you can do. Then the next thing you need to look at is BSMQ open for offshore applicants? And at the moment we are open for offshore applicants for medical professionals. So perhaps you would look at the wife to be the main applicant. Of course, you also need to check whether that occupation or electrical engineer is on the QSOL. And because these occupations change, and next year, because of COVID-19, the list may be quite different. So once you've done that, and you meet all the criteria, what you would do is you lodge an expression of interest with us. We pick up your expression of interest and invite you to lodge your documents. Then if you're nominated, you have 60 days to apply for the visa. And at that point, you've just got to wait to see whether it will be granted. Definitely don't sell your house before the visa is granted. And just keep in mind that if you're looking at the regional visa, which could be a little bit easier to get than the 190 visa, you don't really have any government support when you get here apart from Medicare. So you might want to keep your house for a little while until you actually get a permanent visa. The 190 is a permanent visa, so perhaps if you got that, you could look at selling your house. Then when you get here to Australia, you can do what you want basically. You don't need to have a job offer to come from offshore. So if you want to start a business when you're here, instead of getting a job, then that's absolutely fine. Just keeping in mind that if you're on the 491 regional visa, you do need to earn a taxable income of $53,900 for 3 years to be eligible for the 191 permanent visa. So very long answer, but the answer is yes. It is possible if you meet all those criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty, for the very useful answer. We have another question that's regarding qualified business. So actually, what can be considered as qualified business? This question, maybe I'll pass on to Cynthia. Cynthia, please.
So qualifying business in regards to visa subclass 188 business innovation stream, or the 132 visa significant business history stream, it's has a clear definition by the migration law, which means your business will provide the goods and service to the public for the purpose of making profit, which just means you can't just put money in the business as a silent investors. Has to actively operate the business, manage your business, and have a long-term purpose of making a profit. Has to be a sustainable business, successful business. Basically, you can do any business you want, or as long as it's socially acceptable, legal business. We don't restrict what kind of business you have to do. as I said before, you look at your business background, your interest, and what's the market opportunities in Queensland. So you found out a business you can set up here. But when you apply for the visa, you have to look at your current business in Hong Kong, make sure it's a qualified business, then you can be eligible for this visa. So I would suggest before you approach BSMQ, you talk to migration agents like Wilson Chuan. He has more than 25 years experience based in Brisbane, and also has very strong connection with Hong Kong, travel there very regularly. So you talk to the experienced migration agent, have a full assessment of your current business. They look at all the pictures of your situation, including if you're married, including a spouse, your husband and wife. So they work out the best pathway for you. The question when my colleague Mani just answered that there could be skilled option, even though maybe initially you want to apply for business visas. So agent help you to make a full assessment and find out what's the best visa option for you. So that helps you to save a lot of time and money. Yeah. So do we have to go to?
Okay. Thanks very much, Cynthia. And there's another real life question. If I'm over 55 years old, but below 60, and with a doctoral education background, which scheme can I fit into? Maybe this question, I'll pass it on to Mani.
Sure.
Mani, please.
Sure. No problem. Thank you, Jeff. So I understand that you've got a doctoral background and not a business background. In regards to what you could fit in terms of Queensland state nomination, if you're looking at skilled visas, as I mentioned before, you do need to be under 45 years of age, and there's no age exemption at all. So that is not an option. The only visa you'd be eligible for in the business visas is the significant investor visa, because there's no age restriction for the SIV investor visa. So that visa, you would need to invest $5 million into managed funds. So that would be the only option really if you don't have a business background. One other visa I would suggest you look into, and it's not a Queensland state nomination visa. It's another program, and it's a federal government program, and it's called the Global Talent Program. It comes through the Distinguished Talent Visa. So I would check with the migration agent to see if you qualify for this visa. And basically, you need to be the leader of your field and be in certain areas such as ag tech, fintech, medtech, cybersecurity, energy and mining technology, space and advanced manufacturing, quantum information, advanced digital data science, and ICT. And you need to be likely to earn over $149,000 in Australia. The good thing about this visa is that there's no age restriction. It's a permanent visa, and you can move anywhere in Australia. So if you do qualify for this visa and for this program, which is new, then that could potentially be an option for you. So again, as Cynthia was saying, I would suggest that you see Wilson Chan, or registered migration agent to assess your eligibility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mani. Thank you. There's another question, which is more generic question. Will it be easier for Hong Kong citizens to migrate rather than mainland Chinese citizens to Queensland? Maybe I'll pass that on to Wilson. Hey, Wilson, can you please answer that question?
Yeah, basically, the immigration system in Australia is non-discriminative. So regardless of which country you're from, it's the same, all right? There are certain countries which will be deemed to have better English, say, for example, UK, US, etc. But Hong Kong is not one of them. So in reality, there's no difference at all.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you, Wilson. There's another question, which is more on tax. So I think George might be you're the one to best be able to reply that. If I work in Queensland for less than 3 months in a year, can I be not considered a tax resident in Australia? You got the question? Yes, thank you.
In Australia, if you are physically present in Australia and you work here on the ground, then generally speaking, that income would be taxable in Australia because it was earned here physically in Australia. There can be some limitations to that though. There are some working holiday visas and things like that that sometimes people will come into Australia on. And I can Marnie or Wilson might be able to comment more on those visas. From a taxation perspective though, if you come and work here on the ground and you are paid by an Australian employer, then you will almost certainly be taxable on that money here in Australia because that income is sourced here in Australia, and even non-tax residents of Australia are still taxable in Australia on their Australian sourced income.
Hang on. Okay, thank you, Josh. Thanks. So I think that will be the major questions, and some of the other are repetitive. So these are the major questions. But for all the attendees, please feel free to go to the individual booth and maybe ask our speakers any questions you may like regarding a particular section or regarding particular requirements. So you can feel free to talk, maybe some personal information that you would like to share, some real cases that you would like to share. Our booth will be opened from 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. Brisbane time. So our speakers will be there. And so you can also browse through all the video and all the material in the booth. And outside of that, the virtual fair would be able to provide all the information for you during the coming 7 days. So this virtual fair will still be available for you to browse up to the 17th of June. So if you like, you can still come back and look at the individual booth and browse all the different videos, etc. We might put in more information there after this presentation. And if you like, you might still be able to contact the persons. So just click on the contact us and then be able to send us email or maybe ask questions if you have. And then if you would like us to come back and contact you, please also feel free. It's something that's quite new in Hong Kong. This is probably the second virtual exhibition in Hong Kong so far. So I hope you all enjoy it, and please feel free to ask further questions in the booths. And if there are any issues, any other problems, please also feel free to come back to us, Ascend Step International Limited, and we have our booth regarding virtual and regarding finance. So you can feel free to contact us, and we are able to answer your questions, or if you would like to have any other virtual events. Thank you very much for attending this, and see you in the booths. Thank you. And thank you for all the speakers. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good timing.
Jack, do I just need to stay in here for the booth, or do I have to go somewhere else?